shifting US policy from decoupling to de-risking in China relations. So this is a new trend which has emerged in case of the US-China relations. Not only US-China, but also EU-China relations, or the countries which have tried a protectionist kind of stance with respect to an economically growing China. So China, you have seen, has taken many such aggressive stance in not only in case of economy, wherein it has tried procuring the global supply chains, or where it has tried to hold its choke points on the global supply chains. For example, very, very important industry for which India is extremely reliant on China. In case of trade जो हमारा bilateral trade है, which sector of economy is there which is mainly dependent on China? If that thing doesn't come from China, pharmaceuticals, APIs, we are 90% of APIs are dependent from China. Then semiconductors, so semiconductor chips, these are coming from Taiwan, China, etc. Right? India is 99 to 100% dependency ratio is there when it comes to semiconductor chips. And during the time of COVID-19 pandemic, this was seen that global supply chain shocks emerged. And because of that, the whole world had extremely debilitating impact on its economy. ये तो रही बस economy की बात. There are many geostrategic agendas also, geostrategic moves also of China, like the wolf warrior diplomacy, or like the debt trap diplomacy. Debt trap wherein it gives large amount of line of credits to a country, and then when the country cannot pay back the debt, then it asks for certain political or certain other conditionalities also, right? जैसे श्रीलंका के केस में है debt trap diplomacy. 90% of debt of Sri Lanka goes, or Sri Lanka owes to China, right? Then you have wolf warrior diplomacy, a very aggressive kind of a stand wherein China deploys its diplomats all over the world who actually act as soldiers. Soldiers are very aggressive, they are offensive, or they'll take on defensive roles as well. So China का agenda ही ये था that our diplomats are not only going to be the classical diplomats, but they are going to replicate the PLA's forces in the international high table. So these are the things which China is doing. China is also undertaking such measures like string of pearls, etc. So all over, any kind of thing you take, be it environment, be it geostrategic relation, be it economic relation, China is having a very belligerent kind of a stand, a very offensive, aggressive kind of a stance. So अब यहाँ पे बात आती है decoupling and de-risking की with respect to China relations. So in the early 80s, 1979, 80s, China and USA, they had started engaging in their trade relations. China extremely benefited out of those trade relations. It grew to such a stand, or to such a level, wherein in 2016, after Trump came to power, he saw the bilateral trade between US and China, which was किसके फेवर में था? US China का trade was in extreme favor of China, right? So but Trump perceived it as a zero sum game. अभी अगर हमारा bilateral trade है US से China, दोनों का सबसे ऊपर trade US China से ही है, but we are in deficit, we are not in surplus. But हम ये नहीं करते ना that we cut off our trade relations with US or China. But Trump started doing this. Trump started decoupling from China. Decoupling is not, this is not economic withdrawal, or this is not economic cutoff from a country, but this is raising different types of tariffs or rates in order to deny a country its economic advantage. जैसे steel, aluminium imports from China, against these steel and aluminium imports, There were extreme trade barriers which were raised by USA during 2018. Trump administration started decoupling from China via this. Then came 2019 Hawaii sanctions also, that Hawaii manufacturing components etc. they were banned. So USA started taking these decoupling moves. But now it has shifted to a de-risking agenda. So de-risking is a softer stance as compared to decoupling, where decoupling is also not economic boycott. ठीक है, economic boycott होता है जैसे अगर आप war के केस में ले लेते हैं, that you put on such high economic sanctions against a country, you completely cut off your ties. That is economic boycott. Neither decoupling nor de-risking is economic boycott. Decoupling is a hard stand wherein you raise tariffs etc. What is de-risking? Everybody is talking about de-risking right now, and most recently it has been mentioned in a groupings meet, a very important groups meet. G7 countries have mentioned it right now. So G7 countries have mentioned it right now that this is not in our favor. It is not in our favor to decouple from China. Similarly, you know the context of France as well. France earlier when France leadership it met with the Chinese leadership, they said that we cannot be a vassal state of United States. We cannot be a vassal of US, and we need to follow our strategic autonomy, because there are also very deep economic relations between European Union and China. So it is not in their favor to decouple from China by raising out trade barriers or trade tariffs or economic sanctions. Now they are talking about de-risking rather. And this came to limelight after EC's president, Ursula von der Leyen, you must have heard her name, she had mentioned about de-risking. And de-risking is a technical terminology which is most oftenly it is used by banks, that World Bank or IMF sometimes want to de-risk their loans to smaller banks. Let's say in case of Syria etc. regions, now these banks will obviously falter, so they are going to de-risk their avenues by not lending to these banks. So de-risk is a very technical term, but this term right now is used in geostrategic sense, it is used in economic sense, it is used in international relations sense right now. अब de-risking का meaning है that making your own economy resilient. Making your own economy resilient and also vibrant, diverse, all kinds of adjectives you can use. Resilient, vibrant, diversified in its economic trade relations. And so you don't simply depend on one country for your raw material supplies or for your market needs, because China not only supplies raw materials to other countries, but it also serves as a huge global market for finished goods and products. So now countries are trying to de-risk their economic or foreign relations with China. कि अगर question में paper में आ गया GS2 में that what is this changing stance of de-risking versus decoupling, पेपर 2 में पूछ सकते हैं, and नहीं भी पूछा तो at least you can mention this in any point in your subheadings. A very good keyword to highlight the changing trend in case of international relations. And अब ये बताओ कि ये changing trend हुआ क्यों है? Why has this come up? COVID-19 for sure, but decoupling was also there in picture, right? So COVID-19 has shown the precarious condition of these countries, जैसे कि इंडिया का हो गया in case of semiconductor industry. You're right in that regard. But do countries actively need to now regroup again and diversify so much so that they are highlighting that they are being very vocal about it? G7 has actually mentioned this stance as their economic stance against China now. And also our External Affairs Minister, S. Jaishankar, he has also reiterated the same position that we are going to de-risk. ये चाइना का नहीं मेंशन करा, he hasn't specifically mentioned that this is our economic policy against China, but he has also signaled in favor of de-risking rather than decoupling. So what are some important changes which have taken place in the recent years? अगर सोचो मेंस का क्वेश्चन है, how are you going to highlight that, by which measures or because of what countries are now talking about? China's growing footprint, yes. Nationalist sentiments are brewing in countries like पाकिस्तान के केस में आप बोल रहे हैं जो बलूचिस्तान प्रोविंस का. अच्छा, that okay. So that is also kind of protectionism में भी आप बोल सकते हैं, right? That this is not protectionism. Because earlier protectionism has a negative connotation associated with it because it wants to deny the country its economic advantage. You're raising the trade barriers. No, in de-risking you're not raising the trade barriers, you're not putting economic sanctions, but you're diversifying your relations with other countries. So you must be forming some groups, you must be signing some contracts with other countries. So ऐसे क्या contracts हैं और क्या groupings हैं recently? Right, absolutely. Rare earth metals say, or also Kabil, India's Khanij Bidesh India Limited, it has an MOU with the countries of lithium triangle countries, Argentina, etc. So, Indian Ocean region as well, and recent signing of the CTET, ICET recent signing, critical emerging technologies. It will obviously be beneficial for India's economy in the longer run. Similarly, US itself has engaged into such multiple groupings, जो पिछली बार मेंस में बहुत important था. There were questions expected on IPEF, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, और PG2 framework पे भी PG2 also in US has signed. So these are the things which US is also undertaking right now. US is also trying to diversify, but there are certain rifts between the European countries themselves that they are divided on this line whether to decouple or to de-risk. On the lines of but there is a rift, at least part of BRI, but it's also the part of EU, yes. Absolutely. So like France has shown this rift in a very vocal terms, that it has asked the other countries also to exercise its strategic autonomy. And what is strategic autonomy? What do you mean by this? Very important keyword for IR to be used in any kind of question जहाँ पे भी आप fit कर सकते हो. But what do you actually mean by strategic autonomy? Sovereignty, exercising your sovereignty in practical sense, but sovereignty is not only external. Sovereignty both has external and internal connotation again. Sorry? In times of crisis only. No, not only in times of crisis. Basically, you're prioritizing your national interests over other conditionalities. अभी जैसे काटसा sanctions की बात थी रशिया यूक्रेन क्राइसिस के टाइम, but we have taken the stand that we are going to exercise our strategic autonomy and we are going to take Russian oil supplies. There were many such allegations against India in the United Nations as well, that India is indirectly supporting the Russia-Ukraine war by buying cheap Russian oil. And now Russia has actually surpassed other countries in terms of the oil supplies to India. So are we actually indirectly promoting the Russia-Ukraine war? No. We are exercising our own strategic autonomy because we also have one of the largest world populations wherein we have surpassed China also now. So we also have to look towards the needs of our own people. So we are basically separating our own national interest from the overall international issues which are going on. While de-risking is a counter narrative to decoupling, and de-risking talks about strengthening your own economic resilience by diversifying and deepening and de-risking their relationship with China. De-risking their relationship with China. You can also use such acronyms in your examination as a keyword, because your value addition in paper 2, these will come in polity questions and these will come in international relation question. Very easy way to fetch good marks in paper 2. गवर्नेंस में और जो गवर्नेंस वाला पोर्शन है और बेसिक स्टैटिक पोर्शन, वहाँ पे बहुत फैच करने का स्कोप नहीं होता मार्क्स, यहाँ पे स्कोप है काफ़ी. To try to mention these 3 Ds: diversifying, deepening and de-risking, that this is the changed stance of countries right now.